Hajime Mashite, everybody. My name is Benny Carrillo. I'm one of the contributors to Oprainfall.com, and reason I'm here is because, well, some things are just easier to talk about rather than writing about, and the passing of Mr. Satoru Iwata, I think, is one of those things. When I found out the news myself yesterday, it was the first thing I actually saw when I woke up. What I usually do when I get up is check our press room, see what's any news needs to go out, whatnot, etc. And that was the first thing I saw. So I was wondering what to do with the article. It still really hasn't hit me. I've been up all night before graveyard shift, and so I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I've been trying to think about really what kind of what Mr. Iwata meant to me personally. Granted, I've never met the man, and I'm kind of sad that I never will be able to now, but I think it's telling that a lot of us in the industry are asking ourselves this very question, what impact did this man have on the video games industry, Nintendo, and even ourselves personally? For myself, I think that the answer to that question is a bit complex. First of all, I really do respect Mr. Iwata because he was kind of, whether you like Nintendo's decisions or not, he was a really smart businessman. I mean, he spearheaded the company during the GameCube era. He came into that, actually, as CEO and president in 2002, and I believe that the GameCube launched in about 2001, along with the Game Boy Advance. But he had to basically kind of bring the company back after the 64 era. And granted, he was, I believe, one of the managers before then. I know he came from HAL Laboratory and then moved his way up into Nintendo of America, into Nintendo of Japan, and kind of went up there to become CEO and president. In fact, he was the first president that was not related to the Yamauchi family, I believe is who it is. But he had to kind of bring the company back from a rough spot. And you started to see it with a lot of, innovative titles, but I realize a lot of us hate that word, but it really was what it was. I mean, you had games like Mario Sunshine, like Baten Kaitos. For me, even though he really didn't have a hand developing it, Tales of Symphonia is one of my favorite GameCube games of all time, and personally it's a game that changed me as a gamer. It made me kind of the guy I am today. He presided over Nintendo when these games were coming out, and while you don't really see a lot of that there because already there was kind of, the system was already out, he had no hand in kind of changing the policy. He really could just kind of help monitor the software that was getting onto the system. It's when you get to the Wii and the DS eras, you start to kind of see his own brand of leadership come in as he took Nintendo in this really radical direction where it was really, they weren't going to play the graphics war that everyone else, that Sony and Microsoft were going after. It was, they were going to go after something new, different, with their touch controls with the DS or the motion controls with the Wii, and even the 3D with 3DS and the tablet controller with the Wii U, which we still, honestly, I think haven't seen the full potential of that yet. Granted, it's very hard to do so, but he wanted to do something that was different. And I think he knew that Nintendo couldn't win the graphics race. Instead, they'd have to play a different game, their own game. And they very much have. And whether you agree or disagree, understand or don't understand his policies and the way he ran things over there, it left quite an impact on us all. I mean, just take the Wii, for example. Everyone hated the thing at first, for critics-wise, because of the fact of the waggle controls, and, it kind of dumbed down everything. But it was a major success. And, same with the 3DS. It was one of these things that was just, it worked. It made sense. Touchscreens, we got a touchscreen on the Vita. Our phones, of course, are all touchscreens. And with the Wii, you had the motion controls, which led to the PlayStation Move and even the Xbox Kinect. And I realize that we will all go ahead and say, hey, you know what, these things were in development well in advance, but they were the first ones there with it. They went all in with it, and it worked. And I think that's kind of the amazing thing. It was do or die, and they very much pulled that off. But more importantly, and this is something we've seen more in the last few years, is Mr. Iwata wanted to reach out and touch gamers themselves individually. I mean, we all saw this through, at least my I used to love watching the E3 presentations when Nintendo did them, you know, and hearing Mr. Iwata speak. As someone who's taken 3 semesters of Japanese, let me tell you, it's never easy to speak in another language, especially one that you're not all that familiar with. I still get nervous when I speak to Japanese people here and there, because one of my other jobs I work in a motel, so I have to deal with international customers at times. But he would get out there on stage, and he would just, and really good English too, out there and just talk to you when he's presenting these things. And they were one of the parts of the E3 briefings I really enjoyed, and why we lost those. We gained the Nintendo Directs, and it was always wonderful to see Mr. Iwata at the Directs, you know, either doing the silly things like staring at a bunch of bananas, or doing his famous, you know, directly to you. It really was, he was a joy to watch, and you could tell he loved his job. He loved doing this. This was his passion. This is what he did. He wanted to not just talk to you, the customer, but you as a gamer, and reach out directly to you. It was that personal touch that I don't think you can't replicate something like that. And it was something that was all his own. And it showed how much he cared about things. Because you look at a lot of the other game companies, and after, you know, Nintendo said, we're not going to do a media presentation anymore, we're going to go ahead and do the Nintendo Directs, and then we're going to do the Treehouse. It really was kind of a shift. And that happened when he became CEO of Nintendo of America. He said, you know what, this is how we're doing things now. It's going to be more of a personal touch. And it really was. The Directs themselves, of course, you know, could be recorded, refined, whatnot, and I think that played to their strengths. But then you had things like Treehouse Live at E3, which really was just them sitting down with the developers and you getting to meet these people and see who they were. And as someone who just recently went to E3 for the first time, let me tell you, getting to talk to developers is something that I wish we could all do more often. So for you at home to be able to experience something like that is, you know, is really telling. It was the same thing with the Iwata Asks. He would sit down with developers and talk to them about, you know, what they wanted to do, about, you know, how they got to the game, certain challenges they had, etc. He didn't want, while obviously it's a business, he didn't want to present it as just a business to the consumer. He wanted you as a gamer to realize that they cared about you. And like I said, sometimes we didn't understand what they were thinking. I mean, heck, you know, there are still many people to this day. I think the best example, especially for us, is Oprainfall. Is, you know, why it took so long to get Xenoblade Chronicles, you know, over, and you know what the holdup of that was. But you know, we be able to get the game here, and you know, we're happy. We're definitely grateful for it. We're happy. Don't get me wrong. But there are some things that Nintendo did that we just didn't understand, and I think to this day we still won't. But Iwata always had a reasoning for whatever he did, and sometimes we'd see it later on. You know, like when the Wii and the 3DS first came out, we never would have thought they would have been the Wii and the DS. We never thought they would be the successes that they were, and they were. The 3DS has taken some time to go ahead and get going, but it's slowly moving, and I think same with the Wii U. Time will tell, but that could very easily come back from the negativity that it's received when it first launched. We're starting to see a lot more software come out for it, and I think that'll help it in the long run. And a lot of that was, you know, he always said, hey, you know, we want to give the third parties a chance and have them go out there, and that makes sense to a degree. Nintendo really needs those third-party developers, but it's a balance of things. But I know a lot of people are going to say that, you know, one of his last gifts to us all was Super Mario Maker, and I totally agree. That was something I think that wouldn't have happened if he wasn't there. But in addition to that, I think we also need to keep in mind that Project NX, you know, if he had to have known this was coming for some time, and if maybe he just went and said, you know what, if the future is mobile, and a lot of people, as sad as it kind of is, things are, you know, as phones and tablets get more and more powerful, eventually that's going to have to happen. But if the future is mobile, I want to make sure this gets done the right way, the Nintendo way. And maybe that's why this was the time to jump into that. And he just said, let's do it. Time will tell if that's the case. And I if we were going to go down this route, let it be Iwata that at least led us down that way, because I think that that in the end things will work out. I certainly hope so. I mean, I grew up with Nintendo. I'm a huge Nintendo guy. Granted, these days I seem to be playing a lot more Sony games just because of the fact that JRPGs seem to live on the PlayStation. But I always found myself going back to those Nintendo consoles for, the Mario titles and some of the other, quirky, obscure things that certain experiences you can't get anywhere else. I don't know, there's a lot we could talk about. The man himself was a legend. He saved Earthbound by recoding it. He basically took Pokemon Gold and Silver when the developers basically programmed all of Johto and said, we ran out of space, and he said, no, you can fit more in there, and compressed it down to fit Kanto in there, creating one of the most amazing Pokemon games that ever existed, and honestly one of the last ones I played, just because of the fact that it was so grand, and it was an amazing game. There's a lot we could talk about, and I know for all of us here at Oprainfall, I mean, our thoughts and prayers are with Nintendo and Mr. Iwata's friends, families, and colleagues. It's never easy to lose somebody, and the guy was so young. He's someone that only comes around once in a lifetime, and let me tell you something, as completely honest, as a writer, this is one of those stories you never want to write. You really don't. When I first saw this news, this was like one of my worst nightmares come true, but it's one of those things, when it happened, you gotta take up the, realize you gotta take up the pen and kind of just do it, because you want to make sure it's done right. And you want to make sure you honor the man and his legacy. And I certainly hope we've done that. I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot we can say about this. But I don't want to ramble on. I realize I've been going on for about 12 minutes here, so I'm going to go ahead and end it there. But I wanted to at least say a couple of things. I've tried all night to put it into paper, and I just can't. There's so much there. But Mr. Iwata, from the bottom of my heart, you will be missed. You've touched so many of us around the world in so many different ways, and there's no way we could ever thank you enough. Even for me, myself, I would not be the gamer I am today without Nintendo, and especially even during those dark days of the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance and leading into the Wii. Those were days that honestly changed me as a person and made me who I am today. And I wouldn't be here working for this site and working in this industry if it wasn't for a company like Nintendo and the way you led things. So we owe you, I owe you, and I know many of us owe you a debt of gratitude that we can never repay. I hope, you're looking down on all of us from that, pardon the cliche, but from that coin bonus level in the sky. And I hope you realize how much you've touched all of us and how much you honestly meant to this industry. When your competitors, tell you, stop to pay respects, that's when you know you've meant something. And you certainly meant to a lot to many of us. So rest easy. You've earned it. You've more than done your share for this world and for gamers for many generations to come. They'll be able to look back, to the Nintendo you presided over and you oversaw, and they'll know that, it was a very prosperous and a very influential time in this industry that I love so much, and many of us do. That'll do it. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about this. If you have any thoughts or comments, please feel free to let us know. I know some of us are working on our own ways to say goodbye to Mr. Iwata and pay homage to him, but this was the least I could do. And I realize it's not much, but I just felt like I at least needed to say something. So, take care, everyone, and Jamata.